Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome on in. It is another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. And because timelines are converging and I don't even know what time is anymore, I'm going to state out loud that it is Wednesday, September 23rd at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. I feel like that helps me get grounded and present. And it's another week. It's been a very interesting last few days, and I'm really, really honored and excited to have our two guests with us today, Debra Lynne Katz and Suzanne Hunt. Welcome, you guys, back to Buddhist Biohacker.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you ladies back, and I have a little update too I'll share from when you were last on. I got a little interesting story. But welcome to everybody who's joining in the live. No matter where you're watching live, you can join in the live chat. So feel free to ask us questions. We love it. Share your comments and stories on whatever platform you're on. And if you're on audio, you can absolutely join our forum on MeWe, mewe.com. I guess I'll throw that information up on the screen so you guys can see that as well. So you can join us at any of these places that are coming across the screen right now. And enough of all of that. So I brought Sue and Debra together with me today because all three of us are clairvoyants, and we all have done extensive work in clairvoyance. And Debra is our expert on the scene with her incredible books. You Are Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and just such a profound support for all of us in the world of clairvoyance. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to get together and talk about what that even means to be a clairvoyant? And what our life is like. But I think what was prevalent before we went live was what the heck is going on right now, because there is some energy. My community group has been sharing like headaches, like severe migraines, nausea, anger, sadness. I've had a bunch of stuff going on, and you guys have too. So I don't know where we want to go with that, but what are you guys thinking and feeling right now and noticing?
Yeah, it's interesting, these themes, what you just outlined, all of that I had yesterday: headache, nausea, anger, sadness, via extreme highs and lows, and been talking to a lot of people experiencing the same thing. And it seems like on a micro level, but then obviously you turn on the TV, you just look at the situation we're in, and it's intense, majorly, especially for us in the US.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I think, for one, we've got the energy of the election building. We've got the energy from the fires and people's responding to the fires. And those of us who are empathic might be matching folks that have had to evacuate. And now we've got, the hurricanes or energy coming from the East Coast. So all of these things, the energy of those events, I think, comes up, and we respond or feel them energetically and match others who are as well. And smoke can certainly give us headaches and nausea, if not something else.
Yeah, definitely. With the protests, people are separated from their families. Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away, and now there's these implications of what is that going to do to women's rights, to health care, and just seeing such division between each other, whether, Republicans, Democrats, and how I don't think anyone wants to feel like we're divided from each other, from our neighbors, our fellow Americans, and yet it's almost being done for us or to us to create this artificial divide that then, you're presented with, okay, be for one side or the other, and it's there's so much going on.
There really is. And my question is, so normally I would say, I don't know, 10 years ago, I probably would have been like, gosh, I had a rough couple of days and life goes on. And, really over all these years of inner work and spiritual work and all these things, it's like, whoa, something bigger is going on. I'm like checking Schumann resonance. I'm and I checked in with my community too, and everybody's like, gosh, like I'm feeling this. I'm feeling angry. I want to invite, by the way, everyone who's watching live right now, if you've been experiencing issues, symptoms, emotional stuff, please share also. So my question for you ladies, just an open kind of thought bubble, is how do we get grounded in what's happening energetically versus what's individual? Because I think there's still probably a huge group of people thinking this is just something I went through today, and not seeing that this is a bigger energetic thing that just happened. We went through the cosmic pentagram yesterday, astrologically, which is all about equal rights and truth. Schumann's been spiking way up and way down. So it's like really back and forth, which has also been challenging. And then, of course, all the things happening in the linear reality. So I just wonder what you ladies think. Like, how do we as a group and as individuals start to tune in a different kind of way?
Yeah. Well, I can say what I did yesterday when I was feeling really bad. First, I pulled myself away from my computer. I went outside. I was still feeling in my body so much stress and tension. So in addition to getting some exercise, I did two things. I called my energy back from everything I was plugged into and felt a huge shift. And then I looked up at the sky, and the smoke had cleared, and there happened to be a beautiful blue color. So I just started to bomb myself with images of blue energy coming in, and I immediately felt better. And then I also had an instant thought of a guy who I wasn't sure why I thought of him, but I went to my computer and checked, and he had emailed me, and I realized we had some unresolved things to take care of, and he was waiting for a response. So I just emailed him. I did what he wanted me to do and cleared that out of the way. So for me, that helped me know that I was connected into someone else's energy who was pretty angry at the moment. And so between those three things, I felt a lot better. But it's definitely using, the meditation tools, but also combining physical actions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. My meditation space is really my life savior. And getting out into a green space away from the brick, the mortar, the city can really be rejuvenating. And for me, there's when things are happening and anger wells up, upset wells up about, we talked about the fires and political situations and the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all of these things happening that can be upsets out there. And sometimes I think we feel like we have to respond to that. There's this energetic sense that we have to respond to that in some way. But, and there might be things we can do. There might very well be things we can do. But energetically, releasing what's happening out there may not be a way that we can change that. But as Debra was saying, what we can change really is our internal space and stepping away from our need to answer something with our masculine energy and be in our feminine energy through experiencing nature. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's singing or music or some way to enrich that feminine side can help us turn things around. That seems to work for me very well.
Yeah. And I think too, just I keep trying to come back to asking myself, does this really matter to me? Like whatever is bothering me, like first, is this my own stuff or is this wider, which like you said, could influence everything, but what's right in front of me? And then what's bothering me right now? And if something is bothering me right now, it doesn't really make a difference. How big is it? Is it my ego attached to it? Is it, I was talking about this one unfair review I got for a paper in a journal, it seems so big because I had put so much energy into it. And that's the thing, like we put so much energy into different things. And it's like, but putting it in perspective, how does this matter? I even like to say to myself, when I die in, however, 30, 40 years, whenever, is this going to have mattered to me? That it's so big in my space right now. And a lot of it really ultimately doesn't.
I love that. And that reminds me, like, I always go back to my little gauge of like, is this mine? And for some reason, my gauge clairvoyantly is like this submarine gauge. I don't know what that is. It's always been, though. It's always been. But I have this little submarine gauge that goes like from 0 to 100. And so yesterday I had like a lot of just emotional stuff just flying out of me. And I, luckily, I'm conscious enough. I was like, I need to see what's going on. And same as you ladies, I came here into my office and I sat down and I was like really emotional. And I was like, is this mine? And it was like 20%, like the rest of this. And then I went and looked, similar to what both of you were talking about. I went and looked, well, how much, and realized how much I was taking on from some of the clients I had been working with, my own family. There was a lot of things that occurred over the weekend. My uncle's memorial was this weekend, and there were some things going on. And so it was like, whoa, I just released all this energy essentially that was from all these other people and all these other situations, and it wasn't mine. And so I think what you both are saying about really looking at that, like, what's mine? And I like what you're saying, Debra, about like, when I die, is this even going to matter? Because it probably won't, And I always say, do I want to take this with me? Like, do I want to work this in another life, or do I really just want to work it right now and like get rid of it? Because I really don't want to deal with this later. That's another thing I always check in on.
Wonderful.
And it is so nice to have the clairvoyant tools where you can go and take a look at yourself. Because I realized too last night that it had been a while since like I even did a visualization where I tried to look at my own field and my own body. And I was really pretty happy because I was feeling like just vulnerable to all these energies. But I immediately saw like an image of a ping pong racket with like balls coming at me, but the racket was going up and it was hitting the balls away. And I hadn't even set that up. I have some natural protection, but I love that image. And I felt like even though I was the one to see it, I didn't purposely or consciously set that up, but it made me feel like, yeah, there is something helping me with this. And just to remember or have the tools to be able to look at it, which, all of us, we weren't born just knowing how to look clairvoyantly. We went through training and practiced a lot. But something you said, Lisa, as far as like with your clients, right now, just so many people have so many heavy duty issues going on. And I was wondering for the two of you, I know sometimes I just feel like there's so many people who have so many, they need help. A lot of people need help out there. And it's so easy to almost just start like feeling like you're just drowning, in everyone's needs and questions and issues. I help people look for lost items. And of course, we all have lost items nonstop, right? So that activity alone, you could spend a million lifetimes helping people look for things. So yeah. How would you say you handled that? Just so many people and so many needs.
Well, it's easy to get overwhelmed for sure. And one of the ways I approach that kind of an issue is through meditation, but also escaping my body. Seems like I tend to match my clients' energies at a body level. So when I can do a meditation, and typically when we meditate, we ground, we stay in our body, but after we've trained in that area, we can more skillfully step out and away from the physical world, and it gives us a little bit of a broad perspective, kind of the 20, 30 year thing that you said, what's going to really matter. But it also helps me, for one, deal with the energy of my clients. I can get a sense of what's going on between us, like the matching pictures that Lisa was referring to, and for others on the call, when we read and when we become aware of someone's energy, frequently there's something in our space. So if that is the case, I can become aware of it and can release that a little easier. But the overwhelm for me tends to collect on the outside of my bubble because I'm just a little too empathic. I really had difficulty with that in my early life. And so that still becomes a struggle for me. And the other way that I work with clients is to just step into the energy of compassion. Having compassion for what people are struggling with, we can help them to some extent. As you were saying, we can help with healing. We can help them bring insight. But then being able to let go and just be in compassion for their journey, that is frequently much more difficult than my own. And it's a tough road to be on, because as healers, we want to do more. We have the tools and we know how easy that is for ourselves, and we want to help them. So I guess those are a couple of ways I approach it, although there's no real answer. I don't know.
Yeah, and I love the question because it's not easy right now. And I'll be honest, like I have some clients who are terminally ill. I've had to have some really hard, one of them is somebody who's been a client for 15 years and somebody I care about, somebody I love. And now I'm having to help them plan their departure and make arrangements and look at how long they have and those kinds of things. I have clients in divorce. I have clients I had a client who was barricaded in her apartment in Chicago, trapped because of the violence, couldn't leave her home, and had to have people come rescue her and get her out of the city. Yeah. So it's really tough right now not to be overwhelmed, because we care about everyone so much. And we also are super sensitive. And I've had these moments, like I'm a Scorpio woman, I'm strong, right? And I've had some real moments where I've had to sit down and say, you know what, like I'm really sensitive and I have to give myself permission to feel these feelings. And because it's not as simple anymore. And I don't know if you guys are feeling this, but I can't just separate from my clients anymore. There's not like, I'll blow a rose and I'll clear the energy and they're gone. And I even get goosebumps as I say this. So something's real strong with this, but it's like I'm really tied to all of them right now and what they're going through and what's happening. And some of the things that have helped, especially because all three of us are leaders in the community, right? So some of the things that have helped me is this. Like, here we are, and I've actually played with this idea, and we'll talk about it offline, but how do we keep the pulse on the energy as leaders of the community and go on a live like this and talk about it so we can help everyone? Because now we can help 1,000 people or 10,000 people on a live versus that one person, that one-on-one. And in line with that, I've written a lot of blog posts this year, more than I've ever written, that are like, here's what's going on and here are the tools. Go watch this YouTube video, go buy Debra's book, got a meditation on Friday, right? Like, it's like, we're all here. We all have these tools and resources and classes and books we've written, all these things we were told to do by Spirit that we are doing to support. And so that has helped. And then I created a membership community this year. And one of the main reasons I did that is because we have calls every week and everyone can get on the call and we're all there to support each other. We're all there to talk about what's happening. I can share what's going on energetically and what I'm receiving from an information place, but it's really helping to keep the community. So working in the group atmosphere and the community atmosphere rather than individually is helping. But from an energy standpoint, I'm not able to really disconnect like I was before. I mean, I'm really feel like I'm holding space for a lot of people. And it's part of why I had all of this emotion fly out of me the last couple of days, because I don't think it was even just my client community, by the way. Like, I think there's a massive amount of people who are having what I feel is an emotional overreaction to the political scene right now. And it's like, I felt like this energy like ran through my body and just flew out of my mouth as I'm like shouting and screaming, about nothing. And so, yeah, I mean, nature's a big help, but when like I haven't been able to leave this desk, I feel like since March 24th when we went in quarantine. So it's like trying to get outside. My husband and I have been trying to get up in the mountains like every weekend. We're trying to get outside, put my bare feet on the earth. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's hard right now. It's not an easy time for anybody right now, especially if you're supporting people one way or another.
Yeah, I have an advantage. At least I live in Oregon on a river. There's a river in front of our house and behind us. So I can just step outside and instantly feel at least a little better. But what you outlined, Lisa, I think maybe it used to be where, you had lots of clients, but with different ranges of things that mattered to them. But just in terms of, you'd have lots of people who had relationship problems or, financial or just different, looking to enhance their lives. But now you've got every day where people are dying of an illness or violence, or their situations are so extreme. So it's like you might be like, okay, I'm already busy, but of course you've got this important issue. So let me find a day where I wasn't planning on meeting with clients and fit you in. But then you start looking at it and it's every day with someone who really does need help. But also, like you say, I think the answer is that we can refer people out to other professionals. If those of us that are teaching, we now have students we could refer people to in different levels of students, of graduates, giving them self-help materials and teaching them the tools too. So, that definitely helps to an extent.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, I don't think there could be enough psychics and healers. Like, I just don't think it's possible to have too many. And so you're right. Like, it's all about, like, I want to say to everybody watching, and we have so many great comments. So I want to get to some of your comments, but I want to say to everybody watching, if you feel called to help people, or you've been toying with it, or you've done the certifications, but maybe like this is the time to just step out there. The awakening of 2020 is the call to action. Like, we are all here to support you getting out there, however that looks, whether it's supporting you in training or platforms or whatever. And I think it's so important because there's so many people that need support right now. And I'm with you. Like, it's like I'm taking texts and emails, and it's like I'm trying to have boundaries to support my own self. But at the same time, it's like I can't say no, because it's like I just want to help you. Like, I know that they're struggling.
Yeah. And I think that just with all our different technology, all the venues to communicate, which is so exciting. It's so fun to just be able to communicate with so many different people and look at their creations. And there's just so much, but it's just too much to just, too much input all the time. And so just finding that balance, it is really about that balance. But then also, I think all of us, like, we want to be responsive, and at some point you can't you cannot respond quickly to 1,000 people that reach out to you a day, right? Like, there's no way to be like, oh, well, I want to make sure I respond to everyone within 24 hours or 48 hours, or, otherwise you're just kind of drowning in all these communications. So I think that's a challenge. And then also, like you say, I mean, I used to like CNN. in the past, I thought they did good coverage, and now it's a second by second reporting of what Trump said. And when you are just completely exposed to someone that is being negative or, even abusive, that creates a level of stress. Even if you agree with some of his politics, I think everyone would agree that what's being either between, it's not even so much, he has a right to say whatever he wants to say, but it's that everybody is repeating what he's saying second by second by second. And so we can't, this is just being broadcast to us all over the place. And then even I'm repeating that amount of stress. So I think, why aren't we repeating positive things? But it's stress definitely gets echoed and communicated to each other just over and over.
Yeah, again. I agree in that. I think, the narrative and the agendas of the narrative is like, I've just never seen anything like this. I mean, truly, because And what I've tried to do is I've started watching, for example, Trump's speeches on my own to see what he's actually saying. Because what's happening is there's this warped, I just keep saying it's distorted. But it's with everything. It's not just about, politics. It's like the virus and there's all this distortion energy, like static. And there's no clarity being given right now. And what fascinates me about all of it is that we are stepping into the time of the divine feminine, and she lives in the unknown. And here we have the media and the entertainment industries, all of these industries creating even more unknown because there's like no real grounded communication of what's actually happening. When I heard what was happening to my client in Chicago, I was like, wow, like that's not even something that you would see on the news. It's all like twisted and tangled. And I don't know about you guys. I'm curious. I want to get to these. There's so many great comments. I want to answer some of these questions, but I do have a question about that, which is, how are you guys using your clairvoyance to sort of filter through what's actually happening? I'm almost wondering myself, like, I don't have a television. I'm actually very disconnected from, my husband keeps me in the loop. And he doesn't even watch TV. He's on Twitter, basically. But I'm starting to think I almost need to check in on the daily clairvoyantly on what's happening in the world and in the US and not even bother with like the media. I'm just wondering what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sue.
So we get the newspaper. I don't hardly ever watch the news, but I get the newspaper. And of course, all of the inputs we get tend to have a little bias. And I am on some of the social media feeds, but I tend not to look at the news that way. And so I tend to maybe live in my own little bubble. I want to know kind of the bare facts, but sadly, I guess I would say, a lot of the dialogue that's happening, even like my partner likes to look at some of the comedy shows, where they're poking fun at the politics, and sometimes I'll watch that, but it tends to filter into my world. So I kind of, a little bit like what you're doing, Lisa, keep a little finger in what is the hard news, but I need to isolate myself a little bit from all of the dialogue because it gets into my space. There's something about media. The media, as Debra was saying, is really a wonderful thing. It's expanded our ability to, see what's going on. But it also, as we're viewed on media, that expression of our own energy is expanded again and again. So one of the things I try to do is to clean out people who have been watching or looking at my, even, not only clients, but people who've looked at me through video. And And then to use my clairvoyance, I guess I take a look to see where we're going, when I need to be involved, when I need to take a step, or when I need to take an action. And otherwise, I keep the door a little bit closed. Maybe that isn't the best response, but that's what I do to keep myself protected, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm kind of a news junkie, and but I like to observe how, and I notice my energy drops a lot of times as soon as the news is on, and especially if anyone's talking about Trump, I immediately feel a drop. I love political shows like C-SPAN. I love watching the Senate hearings, and if I wasn't in the psychic realm and thought I had a chance to actually be nominated for office, I would have loved to have been a senator. I'm not going to say it couldn't totally happen, but not thinking it probably would. But so I really love politics and policy and things like that, even though it doesn't make me feel so good. But what I've been doing with my clairvoyance is just trying to get an understanding of what might help with COVID. So I've been using this because I realized for a while I was using my clairvoyance to help other people, but not for myself, or not looking into my own self. So ever since February, I've been doing what I call like COVID predictions, where I look to see what can I understand about it and what's going to happen with it. And I think I've been more, for example, initially they were saying that it is, that it wasn't something that just hung out in the air, that it just had to be directly transferred. And when the cases were getting bad in Italy back in February or so, I tuned in and I saw it in the air. It wasn't high up, it was around the people, but it was people outside, and it was lingering in between people and above them by like a foot or two. And then sure enough, it came out later in the research that it is something that can, linger in the space, but even they found outdoors. So because I saw that, it made me be more careful, and have my husband as well when we go out, where we really don't go out very much at all. So I thought that was useful. And I just kind of usually try to now project about a week ahead or so of what's going to be happening. Now, that's not always good, though. And that's something that might be interesting to talk about, just, foreknowledge of the future. Because I found that when I see that something negative is going to happen, sometimes it kind of creates a longer term of anxiety, because it's like, okay, something's going to happen here, but not always having all the details of what. And then if something negative is going to happen, then you have the repercussions of it when it does happen. So it's almost like not only do you have the time period after it happens, but you have the time period before if it's something negative. That being said, I found it also can kind of help prepare you for what's about to happen, and the way you think about it, and just preparation can be a good thing. So that's what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. I channel my collective team, and so I do a lot of automatic writing. And so I really I do a monthly transmission for my membership community. And that's helped to keep me grounded, because they're so heart-centered. Truly, I mean, they're so heart-centered. And they also have been very clear all year to stay out of the story. Like that it's an awakening on all sides. It's not like one side is right and one side is wrong. It's like everyone's part of this together. And it's really this like release of the challenging energy that this polarized energy we've all been experiencing. And so that's been really helpful. And clairvoyantly, I think what I've been tuning into is more the energetic grids around the planet, and really looking at those. And I think what really came to me really this week that I want to do differently is a lot of like what you're talking about, Debra, like tuning into the virus itself. I've also started this week, I started looking at the cities, especially because of what came up with some of my clients and what's going on with them. I thought, you know what, I probably want to check in with this, checking in with like the geological evolution, the weather, the earthquakes, all these things. And so it seems like as healers and clairvoyants, we're starting, the picture's expanding, like there's way more to look at than like what's going to happen in my own day. And I think we've all been that way anyways, but I feel this expansion of like, it's time to really look. This reminds me of, there's this board called the Psychic Circle. It's like the cheery Ouija board. It's got like bright colors and stuff. I love it. And I haven't touched it in years, but I have it. But there's a thing on there called the hot air balloon, and it talks about rising in the hot air balloon and like gaining perspective. And I feel like that's the call to action right now from spirit, is like, we have to almost pull our clairvoyant view back and higher and really see what's happening at a different level, because the microcosms that are happening everywhere and what's being reported and how it's happening it is dropping our energy, and the picture becomes very distorted again. It goes back to that weird distorted. I got to get to these comments. We have so many great comments. So, oh my gosh, let me get to these really quick. So Carson said, yep, me too. Headaches, nausea. Chalked it up to the smoke, but maybe I should have checked with my community too. She also said, or he, I guess I don't know if Carson's a he or she, seems like 2020 is the theme for the Sensitive's Guide to Self-Care. So true. Elisa says she's been waking up around 3 to 4 a.m. with high energy, headache yesterday, lots and lots of headaches yesterday. That yoga and nature has helped her. Carson's asking, I guess the veil being lifted. It says, have any of you experienced, I guess, the veil being lifted easier, or not even a need to lift the veil, just like it's there? So we can talk about that for sure. Julie says, when I watch the news, I pay attention to the space out of which the narrative is coming from. If it comes from ego, I dismiss it. If it comes from source, I listen. The latter rarely happens. Thank you. So yeah, there's a lot of questions. Thank you guys for all your comments and questions. And I think about the veil. And I love what Julie's saying about looking at where the narrative is coming from. Because man, I've never seen anything like it. Like I saw bits and pieces of the Emmys on Twitter, and I was like, what is going on? It seems like everything is kind of wild, like not grounded at all. It feels like everything is swirling all around and nothing's grounded. And then I don't know how any of us can be grounded if you're connected in with that, which is probably why all three of us are like, ooh, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting about the connection, between COVID, which more than anything else, probably in the last century, has showed us how connected people are, even if we don't even think that we are. And then with the smoke, for those of us on the West Coast, we're connected by smoke. And even I have a client on the East Coast. It actually reached New York, the smoke from over here. So this is showing us on a real physical level that connection, which of course we know on an energetic connection is happening all the time. And then I like that statement about the veil, like, we tend to think of like here and over there, or maybe we're sitting down to do a reading, but the rest of the time we're just being our normal physical selves. And one of the reasons why I started to just try to tune in more into what's happening for myself or globally is just to get used to this idea of trying to be psychic all the time, to not have this divide. And I think for me, there was a time and place for that where maybe I needed to have more of that divide, but really our psychic information it's using our perceptions to get information to help us survive. So why wouldn't we want to do that all the time? And I think that's what the person is asking about. Eventually Why does there need to be any separation between whether we get information from looking at it with our physical eyes or our clairvoyant eyes, or, we hear a report from a friend or the TV, or we hear a report from our spirit guide or from telepathy from each other. I mean, being able to discern different levels of information is important. Who's reporting it? How reliable are they? And that's true on the physical level, and it's also true on the telepathic or, psychic level as well. So probably discernment of information and also just open to that information wherever it's coming from is part of the key here.
And I agree with that. I think sometimes our intuitive, our clairvoyant information that's coming in, not only for the three of us, but also for folks who are watching, can be the truest information that we can get. Because the fact that the media, there's so much permission for anyone to say whatever's on their mind, and it's so easy for us to listen to something that's been videoed or that's been printed and take that as some kind of a truth. And some may be and some may not be, kind of like Julie was saying, but really stepping inward and looking to see what our own truth is one way that I like to use my clairvoyance. What feels right for me? Either I'll see pictures about images coming from spirit. This is what's right for me, or I'll find a direction, or I'll set an intention to be led to where I can get a direction. Set an intention to get the answer, and then it will show up. So there's that micro level, what's true for me, and I really like what you two ladies have said about looking at the larger picture. And so when I meditate, I mentioned earlier, and kind of get a little bit out of my body, it's a little easier to see. You could call it the collective, you could call it the bigger picture, but we can be more neutral in that space. So I can feel a little more objective to what I'm looking at. And I'm sure you ladies do the same, so we can kind of have a little objectivity, a little neutrality, but look at those things that are kind of tough. It's a tough situation all the way around. And I like what Debra was saying about having the psychic antenna up kind of more constantly. I need to kind of work on that because I really love that idea. I think I've been trained to run the antenna down, and that makes me feel more protected in my daily life. But I think we are coming into a time when we need all of our awareness and in our daily life, and it's just a matter of finding a way clairvoyantly to keep the antenna up and stay a little bit within our boundaries, energetic boundaries, if you will.
Yeah, and I love your analogy with the antenna, because that is actually, I think of when we're just walking around in our waking life, that a lot of times that's where our information comes in on a knowing level. And we could even use that visual of just seeing an antenna and seeing it get, you turn it on and it gets bigger, it gets wider, it starts vibrating, and that's a really good analogy. And then we could even imagine the information flowing into it whenever we have a question. So that's a great picture to use. I think we've been trained with our clairvoyance, and we probably mostly do this when we're reading people. We'll have our eyes closed, we'll go into kind of a deeper state, and that state isn't always the easiest to, you can't really function so well. If you think about how you are, like say 30 minutes into a reading, you'd probably burn yourself if you were trying to cook like that or take a walk. But we don't have to be so deep, and we can more kind of just quickly grab information when we need it in our everyday life. So just to be reminded that we can go into different states and they'll have different effects and be fluid in that.
Yeah, I love it. You guys sparked a bunch of different thoughts in my head. I've like thought bubbles, but one of them for sure, you know, you could talk about the neutrality and, you know, where does the information come from and what are we looking at? And I think what's really amped me up lately is my own frustration in seeing in all areas, not just on a YouTube channel or on CNN or in a light worker community, but there's this lack of neutrality. And when I look at all the sides, there's distortion in every side right now, what I see clairvoyantly. And so it's challenging for me because there's truth in everything and there's also faults in everything. And so my frustration is very much the ramping up of being engaged in all these stories and not really stepping back. And so I think it's important to have that neutrality piece that we all learned about. and as a collective community, really asking yourself, I loved what you said, Sue, about what's true for me. And what you said, Debra, about the being on, you know, more often. I've actually had a really kind of interesting 14 days, I guess, in which I'm really experiencing zero separation from myself and those that have passed on, the spiritual energies. Time itself is very twisted for me. I'm seeing things from the past and the future all at once in my space. And I've also been having these really profound experiences in my dream state in which I'm seeing transitions of people leaving and what that's about. And I feel or I know that I'm being taught something new from, you know, the spirit world or the spirit team or my guides or whatever you want to call them, source possibly, whatever it is, but I'm being taught in the dream state something new. And so what's come up for me when you talk about the veil, I think the veil is quite possibly what we've created ourselves, right? And just like you're saying, Debra, it's like you just sort of have to tune in and you can get the information. It doesn't have to be as deep as when we're in a session with somebody and we're going more into that trance-like state. And so for me, a couple of thoughts. One is I've learned I'm really into this date and time thing. And I rarely ever wear a watch because my telekinetic energy doesn't usually last that long. And I don't have one on right now, but I have been wearing a watch. And what I've been doing is when I'm tuning in or all of a sudden I feel like there's something there or I'm seeing a figure or whatever's going on, I look at my watch as though it's stopped and I become very, very present in the present moment. And it seems like automatically I'm in this time between time space and I'm gathering information. So it's almost like the time is stopping. It's very interesting. So that's kind of this practice of much like that antenna going up. It's like my watch, like, okay, where am I? What's happening? So that's something that has really shifted for me very recently. And I'm still going through it, whatever it is. And so I think a lot of people are experiencing time distortions and like, where am I right now? It's so wild. But I would say that I feel like all you have to do is ask and the veil is going to be lifted for you. I don't really feel like there's some kind of, thing that has to happen. It's kind of like, it's actually all right here, right now. So.
Well, and something that I've never thought of before, but you triggered the idea that right now we're communicating. So many people all over the world are communicating, and we're communicating within vastly different time zones, like not even just a few hours difference, but, with people all over the world. Some are in the middle of our nights, and it's crazy. And so what's the meaning of that, even that time that some of us are in night and day in different seasons, and we're all interacting at once? That I think there's something even as if time doesn't really matter anymore. And then with consciousness that you can tune in the future, or you can have memories of the past, and none of it's just a thing of itself. It's how we perceive it to be, right? Whatever happened in the past happened, but it's how we experienced it uniquely. And the same thing with what's happening in the future. So really there is this sliding back and forth, and maybe because so much is unknown right now, our roadmap of how life is going to be is suddenly not there anymore for people. So what happens when so many consciousnesses were pretty sure things would just go along as they were going, at least in America, and now it's not there anymore? So something big is happening with time. But then I think as, clairvoyants or anybody that does a kind of meditation practice where they go into a deeper state, I do think we have to be careful, because especially when we're so busy, it's so easy to do a reading and jump up and then go take care of something else. And I was thinking that might even be happening with you, Lisa. I've seen it with me on the days, because I'm limiting how many readings I do during the week. Like I'll do, one a day. And since they last a couple hours, a lot of times that's how I'm scheduling. But I'll find like I've lost track of time for like the next 5-6 hours afterwards. And I realized like I didn't fully come out of trance. Everything blended in to each other. Whereas I used to take a lot more time to, make sure I was fully out of it. And so I think that's important, because we could just, and not that it's bad to be in a trance state, like you might be getting all sorts of creative images or communicating more with guides, but then you kind of spend time in that dreamy feeling, or maybe, it's hard to clean your house, or it's hard to make a cup of coffee and not, have the whole thing spill all over the kitchen. I'm always leaving some ingredient out of the coffee, like the coffee or the water, or turning it on, especially if, I haven't fully transitioned out of these trance states.
Yeah, I got goosebumps when you're talking about time.
Time is it's interesting what you're both saying about time, and I haven't thought about it that much. And I'm gonna take a look at that myself a little more deeply. What I did want to speak to is the dream state that, and kind of that trance state that we've been touching on. And I think there's such a rich space, our dream state. One of the things that I've found, and I know you've had some interesting sleep experiences, and you touched on one, Lisa, where you're learning in your sleep state. And I've found sometimes I wake up and problem solve. There's such an awareness. It's like I think our dream states, and I've never actually studied it, but we float in and out of these lighter sleep and deeper sleeps. And some of those waves of the sleep, where if you wake up partially, it's like information is so accessible, spiritual information, awareness about what's happening, the pictures, the kinds of issues that I'm struggling with, more clarity comes in at that time. And I've even found myself laying in bed and doing healing work on myself or my house. My partner has a very different worldview as far as spirituality than I do. He would consider himself an atheist. And of course, I'm very spiritual and psychic. And so sometimes a lot of something I'm struggling with is pure and simple. The atheistic energy is gotten into my room where I do my work, or I've let that in and it's creating some kind of doubt about what I'm working on. So I think it's a rich area to receive information, as well as so we can mine our information, as well as create a very creative space. And we can all use that, even if it's just having an intention before going to sleep at night, because I think we get on the astral and we're all, doing our work. The three of us are, and maybe others as well. Light workers are, and but I think we all have access to that rich space of healing, and information.
Yeah. Well, something my husband, we've been together now for 18 years, and he initially, for the first day we met and I told him what I did, he was like, "You seem like such a nice girl. Why would you be involved in that crap?" And right away, this is my life, and it's serious, and you're just uneducated about this. Like, that's all the difference is that, if you had the amount of understanding of this, then you wouldn't be making these comments. And he agreed. The nice thing is, over the years, it's taken years and years, but he's starting to be more open, even though he's not that like directly interested. But what I'm noticing is subconsciously he's getting more and more psychic all the time. So I was in my room leading my students through an exercise of grounding their room and the whole house. And I was thinking, and I was working my own space because my room outside where our house is under renovation. And so my office is in the middle of the living room, and it was all messy, and he hadn't cleaned the inside for a few months. And as I'm doing it, I come out from my lunch break, and he's just rearranged all the furniture. He's just vacuumed the carpet. I came out as I was doing, he didn't know what I was doing in there, and he had cleaned the entire space. So I think it spoke to the energy work I did, but also I'm noticing, I could just be like, "Oh, I'm really thirsty," and then he brings me something right at that moment. He's responding telepathically, even though he has no idea what he's doing. So I think there's hope for people, whether or not they consciously, are acknowledging it. We can make people our psychic slaves just through our.
I love what you're saying. And I think there is a merging, and when you live with a psychic, you can't help but start to open up to some of that, and my partner has too. And just to say that he totally supports my work. He loves all the spiritual growth that he would see as personal growth. So we have our language, but I think you're right. We do tend to merge a lot when we live in the same household. So which way that energy is going and watching that clairvoyantly is an important part of my daily life for sure.
Yeah. And what you say about like the energy of skepticism, that is really a big one. And several years ago, I noticed I would go through periods, and you guys probably noticed this too, like where you have a lot more confidence in your readings and everything is going well. And then you start to hit like a period of time where you start to go into kind of some doubt, or just things seem more difficult. And I was going through one of those periods, and I had a reading from somebody, a former student actually. And I was just like, could you take a look at what's happening in my reading space? And she said, "Well, I see several brand new students, and they just seem like really insecure about what they're doing." And she said, well, she pretty much said, "Pay attention to when you're going through these periods, because it seems I'm getting that it corresponds with the start of your classes." And sure enough, I tracked it for several years. And so I teach 12-week classes. And so the first 3 weeks or so, yes, in my reading space, it would correspond with where the students were at. And as they started to get more and more confident, here I'm back to feeling great in my reading space. So yeah, that was really interesting. But I know like a lot of people that are watching us, they're in school, they're students, some are involved in research, and that whole realm can just be so antithetical to an intuitive space. So it's not that you can't have both, but I see where I'm really heavily involved in research and with these scientists, and it's really easy for that energy to get into this space, and then you go into doubt. And when you're doing a reading, nothing gets in the way more than your own internal voice of saying, no, this can't be true, or, oh, I already knew this, or they're not going to like what I say, or yeah, I'm not going to tell them this because it doesn't make sense. And all that self-talk is what gets in the way of the flow more than anything else.
Absolutely.
I agree. And I think that that's really what's the lesson of 2020 is listening to your own intuition. Like there's been words like discernment and things like used. And I think at the end of the day, are you listening to yourself, and do you trust yourself? Because we're asking for information to be given to us instead of seeking the information or trusting what we know is true. And I think, man, that is like, whew, the trust piece is like that final brick in the wall for everyone who's doing any kind of clairvoyant work or psychic work or intuitive work. But it seems like now that's for everyone. It doesn't really matter if you even believe in clairvoyance or psychic work. It's like, do you trust yourself, or are you doubting yourself? Because when you doubt yourself, that's when you allow all of this information that may be right or not right come into your space and take it over.
Yes. And sometimes, that doubt or that mistrust, well, and the good thing to remember, especially as clairvoyants, is if something comes up creating that doubt, to remember to look to see what it is. Is there some kind of judgment or somebody else's energy there? Because look to see what got in the way is kind of, I think, what you're saying. Something's there. And as healers, we know how to clear that. But it's just taking a moment to remember to clear that out, to keep our space clean. Energetic hygiene, maybe. Yeah,
that's a great word for it. And just to pay attention to that inward chatter that is just always there in different levels. And sometimes the chatter is really loud, so we are aware that we're engaging with it, but it can also be pretty subtle. And whether that's happening when we're just having a conversation with someone, so we don't really hear them because we're hearing our own opinions so much, or it's happening in a psychic realm, I would say that's one of the biggest things that gets in the way. And if we can just quiet that, let the information come in, and then later we can assess it, but we won't even get the information if we don't create a space for it to be able to come in first.
Well said.
Totally agree. Ladies, time doesn't matter in here, does it? I'm like, time just flies when we're in here, but maybe it's because it doesn't matter and it's all mixed up in a big cauldron. But I want to give some space because all three of us do have resources available to help everyone. And so I want to give you guys some space to really share what you feel like sharing today. Debra and Sue's websites are going across the screen. All their information's in the show notes too. But I just want to give you ladies some space and an opportunity to share what's going on in your world right now and what's accessible to people and what you want to share with everyone today to continue the support and the momentum of this year.
Go ahead, Sue.
Oh, okay. My website's going across the bottom, and I'm available for clairvoyant readings and healings, of course. And I'm also teaching healing meditation, which are some 6-week courses to help people open up their grounding, to learn to manage the space, their energetic space, like we were talking about earlier. And I've been working on a larger program as well, which is it's an intuitive program. It's a self-healing program that people can use to look at themselves for energy healing work. And so there's subsequent classes that I'm putting together. And if you look at my website, I'll have that information up there, and also on Facebook. If you want to follow me on what is my Facebook? I think it's Create Possibility, or you can just search for energetic healing energetic healing arts should be on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. So that's what I'm doing to reach out to support the community. And thank you, Lisa, for that space.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can find me at debrakatz.com. And so that's also the website for the International School of Clairvoyance. And so we offer a variety of 12-week programs, including the programs are wrapped into one, which is a master class program about between a year and 2 long program to develop your clairvoyance, to read yourself, and to learn how to read people professionally. So people can go on and do basically what we do with others. So classes, and then my books, You Are a Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and Freeing the Genie Within, which you can get on Amazon. And I'm about to release the trilogy where they're all together in one book. And so, yeah, check it out.
That's exciting.
Nice.
I love it. And as for me, I think the best place to go for me is ajatakasha.com. That's AJATAKASA, because I make everything complicated, but it's Tibetan for boundless space, and it's my container for my spiritual work. And so I do have a membership community. We have calls every single week and ceremonies for the full and new moon. We also have what we just launched is the Light Library. So all of the video presentations, teachings, and facilitations for myself, and all of the summits that we've done this year, it's over 120 videos right now, are now accessible for $4 a month, you guys. It's pretty awesome. And we have them all categorized in this really great digital library so that you can learn as much as you want to about any of the stuff. So I'm really excited about that. And we have a formal announcement on October 1st, but we are launching the Ajatakasha Institute for education and research in the areas of the paranormal, parapsychology, epigenetics, quantum physics, and their relation to metaphysics and all of those things. So it's going to be pretty exciting once we get that moving. But for now, if you're looking for support, I would just go to ajatakasha.com on my end. And I just love both of you. I really appreciate it. I feel like we could talk for several hours about all of this, and I hope we can do this again. And because really, it's just important stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to everybody who joined us today. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we have
thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone who joined. It's great to be here.
And it's so nice to finally meet you, Sue. It's really
wonderful to meet you in person, Debra. After all these years, you've been kind of my idol from clear back in 2006 or 7, I think. I first picked up your book. Turned my life around.
It did. You know, that's funny. That's about the time that I read Debra's book too, 2006. Yeah. And I'll say, for all of you guys who are on the Buddhist Biohacker Forum on MeWe, I have a fun idea too. And I know that Debra and Sue, you guys are welcome to join in with us there. But I have You Are Psychic and Extraordinary Psychic on my Kindle. And I thought it would be fun to share some of those activities, and let's do them together. And maybe we can share on the forum what you're experiencing as you're practicing and learning. We've been doing some of that with Julie Hoyle's book on meeting the shadow and talking about shadow work. So I think it'd be fun to do some of that with clairvoyance too, because I think we're all here learning and growing together. And so we can do some of that on there too. So you can join the forum there too. And thank you again so much. You guys have been a great audience. Thank you for all your comments and shares and questions. And thank you to Debra and Sue. I just love you guys. And I hope everybody has a good day. No more headaches.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.